wanted to share a bit with you about how I made food the most average part of my day. And I say average, not like in a boring way, but as in like still delicious, but it's just not a huge piece of my headspace. And the thing is, I'd previously struggled with knowing what to do, but not being able to do it. Which sounds crazy because I was a personal trainer. I was training as a nutritionist. I should have known, right? But the doing was harder than the thinking. So I cried in Tesco because they didn't have broccoli. Not my finest moment, I will admit. Eventually, a staff member asked if I was all right. And when I explained the tears because I couldn't get any broccoli, he went out the back to find me some, which was very, very kind of him and very much appreciated. Now, in the same week, I cried again over a plate of salmon and asparagus. Genuinely two of my least favorite foods on earth. And then I ordered a pizza anyway, because following this plan was just not working for me. And I actually thought I was losing my mind. I don't know if you've thought that too, right? Anyway, I am explaining this because I developed a disordered relationship with food when I was 10, which you heard right. Yeah, I was 10. And by my 20s, my entire life revolved around it. I worked, 10, 12 hour shifts in gyms. I counted macros, tracked, planned, negotiated with myself constantly. And I'd plan Monday's meals on Friday, like at the end of the week, I'd be planning for the next week. And over the weekend, I changed my mind like multiple times by Sunday, what I was gonna eat, when I was gonna eat it, how much. I would spend time lying in bed running calculations. Like if I have 3 fewer grapes and just like 1 spoon of rice, then surely on my break I can have a cookie. And I would calculate it in MyFitnessPal and see if this actually worked out or not. I know. Anyway, this is what my brain did all day, every day. And it's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. It's not embarrassing talking about it now, but like at the time, it just felt like all consuming. I would, like hide chocolate bar wrappers, so somehow it didn't count. Like if I didn't see it in the bin when I opened the lid, I would eat standing up quickly, like on the go, because somehow that also didn't count because I hadn't actually sat down and eaten something. It was weird. I was like afraid of food and also obsessed with it. I kind of felt like it's all I could think about, and I wish I couldn't think about it at the same time, which might sound familiar. Uh, I know, but my headspace was just full of food and food calculations, and I tried everything. I felt like I tried everything, and like I mean everything. I worked with several different bikini competitors. Not like I wanted to compete, but that, there were meal plans. It was strict. I knew it was going to be body composition focused. It was chicken, broccoli, rice, repeat, or asparagus and salmon. And they tell me, like you just need to be stricter. I need to push harder. You've got to want it more. And I genuinely couldn't have wanted like it anymore. Like it was everything to me. Fat loss, my body composition, it felt so important. I was, tracking obsessively. My MyFitnessPal was opened more times than like Tinder at a wedding. Seriously, I tried just eating normally, but I couldn't remember what normal was supposed to look like because it had been so long that I had just been obsessing over food that I wasn't quite sure what I even liked anymore. But the pattern was kind of always the same. I'd have a new approach. There'd be initial hope, some progress and excitement. And then, I couldn't keep it up because it was just too strict, too much. And then a bit of a spiral. And then I need to start again because I'd just kind of gone way, way off track from this very rigid plan. And every single time I always ended up like blaming myself because I felt like I was a problem. Like, I was weak or I didn't have enough willpower. I just, for some reason, just couldn't get over like biscuits and chocolate. And if I could just figure out how to do that, somehow I'd be able to eat perfectly and all my dreams would come true. And it felt like everybody else could do it apart from me. And I hated the fact that it felt like it was a me thing, you know? Now, what changed wasn't actually the food. Like, I still eat chocolate and biscuits now, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. But the key is that I had spent years trying to solve a psychological problem, a headspace problem, my thinking and feeling about food with nutrition solutions, having more rules, better plans, stricter tracking, as if that was going to help. I might as well have been trying to save a sinking ship by putting up umbrellas, like that's going to keep the water out somehow. None of it worked because none of that actually addressed why I was doing what I was doing, why I was struggling with food the way that I was. The way I thought about food is what the problem was. And also what I made food mean about me, that was a problem too, This is crucial. I could recite macronutrient ratios in my sleep. I had more nutrition knowledge than most of the personal trainers that I'd ever worked with, particularly bikini competitors. Not all, but the ones I worked with, yeah. So information was like never the issue for me. The issue was that I'd attached my entire sense of self-worth to what I ate and how I looked, and therefore controlling how I looked meant controlling how I ate, and that became the focus. Every quote unquote good day meant that I was a good person. Every bad day meant that I was somehow failing at my entire life. It sounds so weird to say it out loud. It's much easier to write about this stuff. But food had become like a kind of scoreboard for my self-esteem. And I was always losing, always losing points. The restriction had kind of rewired my brain over time. There were forbidden foods that were, of course, irresistible to me. Eating them created shame, and shame led to harder restriction because I kind of had to prove to myself that, I wasn't as bad as I seemed to be. It was like a perfect, vicious loop. Now, I never once asked myself why I was, standing at the fridge, raiding the cupboards 47 times a day. What was I actually hungry for? What feeling was I trying to fix with food? Yeah, I didn't need another meal plan, but I didn't know that at the time. What I needed was to understand my own brain. So I challenged myself. I got to a place where I was actually eating more than, planning and eating more than 1,500 calories consistently. That was nice. I didn't get fat like my brain had predicted. I trained harder, shockingly, recovered better, grew some muscle, changed shape, changed body composition, slept much better than I had for quite a long time. And the thing that I'd been terrified of, it was the thing that actually worked. And here's what we don't really hear about fat loss on social media from the majority of trainers and nutritionists. The women that I work with who want to lose weight do lose weight. They do. But they do it without that mental kind of like battleground going on, without the Sunday dread, without Monday resets and, constant negotiating what they're going to have, when they're going to have it, how much they'll have. They just learn over time to develop the skills that allow them to eat appropriately, and their bodies respond. Because when you actually stop fighting your body stops fighting you, Fat loss follows every time if that's a goal that somebody has. So, I don't know, you might be thinking, if you're anything like the women that I work with, that your brain is already generating reasons why doing something differently won't work for you. I completely get that. Like, oh, that's great for you, Georgia, but I'm different. Yes. I want to talk you through a few things because this really, really helped me. That when I was working through my relationship with food, which in reality took me, probably from my mid-20s through to my mid-30s. So it took me 10 years because I started and stopped a few times and got so far, stayed where I was, went a little bit further. But I managed to do this while I was working, 12-hour shifts in a gym. Didn't like it. In fact, in one gym, I was on call 24/7, plus running a business on the side. I managed to do this while going through a breakup and, moving across the country with a brain that had been stuck in disordered eating patterns since I was 10. So I'd had several decades of this. So if anyone had an excuse to stay stuck, it was me, for sure. It'd be much easier to not have done that work. But then I would still be right there now. And that's not easy and that's not okay for me. So I knew I was willing to accept that kind of difficult. But it's easy to say, I don't have time for this. I'm so busy, I can't focus on myself. But this kind of work doesn't really require more time. It requires a different approach to the time that you're already spending thinking about food. If you're losing 30 minutes, an hour, 2-3 hours a day thinking about food, then you have the time. We just need to change where that energy is going. And if you're honest, it might genuinely be 2 or 3 hours a day if you add it all up. We're just going to redirect that energy, somewhere else. And equally, you might feel exactly like I'd felt, which was I really have tried everything. But no, you've tried every diet, you've tried every food solution to a psychological problem. As I mentioned, that's where I was. But that isn't everything, that's the same thing in a different kind of packaging, a different clothing. You may not yet have actually tried to understand why you do what you do and how to work with that. Maybe you feel like, I don't know, I'm just broken. Easy to feel that way. I have definitely been there. But the truth is that, you've succeeded at harder things than changing the way that you eat. You've built a career. You may have raised children, navigated relationships, breakups, handled crises at work, in your family, emergencies. You're not broken or incapable. You've just been given the wrong tools, not yet the right tools to actually get where you want to be. So I love a good analogy, and I'm always bad at thinking of them on the spot, but you wouldn't use, like a hammer to fix a software bug in a computer, right? I know that sounds absurd, but when we think about it, if what's going on is your thoughts and feelings about food impacting the way you eat, changing the way you eat is not going to change the way you think and feel about food. We're trying to do it backwards. We just didn't know. So this is why you can't use a meal plan to fix thought patterns. I hope that's actually making sense in the way that it does in my head, because there are a few lies that often keep us stuck in this kind of loop that we're in. Number one being that you need more willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes throughout the day. We don't have the same willpower for anything at 8 p.m. as we do at 8 a.m., which is why we can feel fine, at breakfast, and by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and towards dinner, we feel like we're kind of losing our shit. It's not a discipline problem. It's quite literally a design problem. We haven't got that same resilience in the evenings. And then number two, the other myth that we kind of come across quite a lot is that you need to eat less and move more. Now, you probably know exactly what to eat, right? We all know that an apple has more fiber and more vitamins and minerals than a Mars bar. That's not something that you're oblivious to or unsure about. You could probably write a meal plan yourself. If knowing was enough, then you wouldn't feel stuck right now. You'd have solved this years ago. And then the third myth that we get a lot is that you need to heal your relationship with food. And I think this can be a bit misinterpreted. Like, what does that actually mean? On one end of the spectrum, it's kind of letting go of absolutely everything, lighting a candle, journaling about your feelings. It can feel quite vague and quite passive. And that's really not what we mean by changing the way we relate to food. But you don't need abstract healing. You need some specific tools and an understanding of what's driving your behavior. That helps you improve the way that you relate to food. And then number 4, we often hear you just need to be kind to yourself. Just be compassionate. Now, this is true and this is false. So telling yourself like, oh, it's okay, tomorrow's just a new day, while you're elbow deep in the biscuit tin isn't kindness. That is kind of avoidance of supporting yourself. But part of compassion and kindness can be a fierce self-compassion. It can be action taking and protective. That can be the kind that says, okay, I'm not going to let myself keep suffering like this. I'm going to figure out what's actually going on right now. And I think that's a really important distinction. It's not being soft on yourself, it's being genuinely kind and loving. Because ultimately, if you're stuck in the same cycle that I was stuck in, you deserve much better than this. It's exhausting. It feels never ending, but it can end. And that is not soft. That's probably one of the hardest, most loving thing that you can do for yourself, which I kind of think is amazing, So after years of figuring this out the hard way, then training as a nutritionist, and in the last few years, training as a counselor, psychotherapist, I work with 3 stages now, just to keep it very simple and easy to grasp and to work with. So I call it the 3 U's. Super simple: understand and learn and unlock. In that order, and that bit really matters because a lot of approaches when we're thinking about diet culture, when we're thinking about what you might see, let's just say on Instagram, for example, or on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, or even even like in magazines and newspapers, most approaches skip straight to the kind of the unlock part. Like, here's your meal plan, here's your workout, go, 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 go. And that's why they fail you, because we haven't got to the understanding, why you do what you do. Not in a you need therapy for years, but in a practical, like, oh, that's why I'm kind of hungry at 9 p.m. That's why I struggle when I'm feeling this kind of emotion. We just need that understanding, because every weird thing that you think is bizarre that has to do with food actually has a logic to it. Your brain isn't broken. It's just working with the best that it's got right now. And we just need to understand like what's happening. And then we need to unlearn it as well, like interrupt the patterns that keep you stuck, whether that's all or nothing thinking, that leads to kind of constant Monday resets, or, diet rules that you've absorbed from a variety of diet culture messaging over the years, kind of running in the background all the time, influencing and dictating what happens. We need to unlearn it, that carbs after 6 don't make you fat, that one biscuit doesn't mean the whole day is ruined. We have to test these theories out and feel safe doing it, because most of what you believe about food isn't true. It's just very familiar and very, very repeated. And then finally, that last U is that unlock, then we get to, okay, now I can actually work on fat loss. Now I can really honor my health, because these other things aren't getting in the way. And that doesn't mean that you can't honor health and fat loss along the way, but we have to get those other tools in, like laying the foundation so everything else can build on top. So fat loss, great. Food freedom, absolutely. Both, yeah, that's what most of my clients work towards. They're not mutually exclusive. It's just that you've obviously seen and heard more methods that make you choose between one or the other, kind of saying you can't have both. So I'm going to give you an example of just two clients. There's the CEO who ate in her car. She ran a team of like 50 to 60 people. She made decisions before lunch that were worth millions of pounds that would freak me out, but she was very comfortable with. But every day when she left work, she would sit in her car and she would eat as many snacks as she could, and she would stop by the petrol station on the way home. And when she pulled up again, she would eat some more snacks before she went in to make dinner for the rest of her family. Now, she knew that she wasn't hungry. She was decompressing. The food was, just the only 10 minutes of the day that kind of belonged to her, that gave her a break where she could actually like breathe, And once she understood that, everything else kind of fell into place. It started to shift and we could work with that. We didn't take car snacks away and ban them. That doesn't help. We just find another way of doing it. What we did was figure out like what she actually needed, gave space, transition, something that was truly hers. And, she still sits in her car for 10 minutes when she gets home, but she's not eating food as an excuse to sit and have that break. Then another example, a client of mine, she cried at her daughter's birthday just before Christmas. Now, it wasn't because the party was awful or because the cake was awful. It was because she'd spent the whole afternoon negotiating with herself about whether or not she could have a slice. By the time the candles were blown out, she was exhausted. She'd been thinking about this cake the whole party. And then later, she sent me a photo. Again, she was at another birthday party. She'd eaten some cake. She'd had a great time. She'd taken loads of photos. She'd enjoyed the slice of cake that she'd had. And then, talked to her sister, talked to her friends, didn't think about it again. And it was a completely different experience. And that's what this work does. It's not a diet of restriction. It's not suddenly tapping deeper into this well of willpower that we're all supposed to magically have somewhere. It's just being able to eat cake at a birthday or at a wedding and thinking about something else, not focusing on only the food the whole time, Super proud of them. So I'm going to take you through a little bit more around like what it's like when you've done that work on your relationship with food. Like you wake up, you eat breakfast, maybe you go to the gym, maybe you don't, but you don't think about it again until lunchtime. And at lunch, you eat something. Maybe it's, healthy. Maybe it's a quick sandwich from Pret, whatever. You eat it, you move on. There's no calculations, no compensating later, because on average, you eat in a way that you feel really good about and works for you. And in the afternoon, there's not this crazy energy crash. You're not side-eyeing the biscuit tin in the staff room. There's no kind of battle of willpower when you're feeling depleted. You can go on holiday, you can eat the local cuisine, like you can eat pasta in Italy, you can drink the wine, you can come home and nothing feels like it has to be fixed or undone. It's not a scary experience. It's amazing. And you can get dressed in a matter of minutes instead of spending half an hour trying on different outfits and kind of getting frustrated that you just don't feel right in your clothes. So all of that mental space that food used to occupy becomes yours again for whatever you want, like your work, your family, your actual life, maybe even just to keep it empty and just feel like you've just got some space and capacity in there. Food becomes just an average part of your day. It's still delicious, not gonna lie, still love a Galaxy caramel. And it's not that you don't enjoy it, it's just that food becomes just food. Sometimes it's a bit more special than others. It's just lunch. It's kind of relaxing, really. So if you've watched this far, that tells me something. Either you're procrastinating spectacularly, in which case, respect, or something that I've talked about today has kind of hit a little bit of a nerve or felt like it was talking to you. Maybe you've lived similar experiences to me, and if that's the case, then yeah, you're my person. So let me be straight with you. You can keep doing what you've been doing and feeling stuck in another diet, another reset, another app, trying to solve, psychological problems with nutrition solutions and wondering why it just doesn't work for you long term. Or you can do something different. So the Weight Loss Without Chaos Accelerator is where we do this work, the 3 U's, where you can understand why you do what you do, unlearn the patterns that are keeping you stuck, and actually unlock the fat loss or the food freedom or both without that mental chaos. It's 6 modules and it's self-paced. So it's completely private. There are no group calls. No one sees you. No one knows you're there apart from me. It will feel like just you and me and the work in your own time. It is $397. All you need to do is drop me a message or click the link in the video. And that's it. The link will be below the video and in my stories for you. So if you've ever tried every diet, every book about diets or nutrition, you've read or you've borrowed from the library, you've got a pile of magazines at home, you've listened to every podcast, and you're still standing at the fridge arguing with yourself and wondering, what's wrong with you. Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. You've just been using the wrong tools for the problem that you have, and this is the right one. I wrote a full version of everything that I've talked about today as an article, the complete framework, case studies, all the detail that I couldn't fit into just chattering away here. And that link is below as well. You can go ahead, take what you need from it, but stop starting over and start understanding. And I will see you in the accelerator.